The farm had always been quiet. But after my father's death, that silence began to feel different. Heavier. Colder. As if every corner of that place carried a memory that no one dared to touch. I was 17 when everything changed. To this day I can remember the smell of wet earth on winter mornings, the creaking of the old wood on the porch, and the distant sound of hooves echoing in the stable before sunrise. It was a simple life on the outside, but far too complicated on the inside. My mother said that routine helped keep your head on straight. So, every day was the same. Waking up early. Feeding the animals. Cleaning the stable. Helping with the fences. There was almost never any conversation during breakfast. Just the clatter of cutlery and the old radio playing country music softly in the background. She had changed a lot after my father died. Before, my mother laughed loudly. She sang while cooking. She joked even when things went wrong. But after that accident, it seemed like a part of her had been buried with him. And maybe a part of me too. Sometimes, I'd catch her looking out the kitchen window towards the pasture, completely still, as if trapped in some distant memory. When she realized I was looking, she'd immediately return to normal. "Did you finish the barn chores?" she'd ask dryly. It was always like that. Objective. Cold. As if feeling was a luxury we could no longer afford. But there was one thing on that farm that still kept my father alive somehow, his horse. Titan. A huge, strong, imposing black horse, but strangely calm when he was with me. My father loved that animal more than anything. He said Titan understood people better than many humans out there. After the accident, I never managed to ride him again. Every time I got near the stable, my chest tightened. Images flashed through my head, the ambulance, the heavy rain that night, my mother crying softly, thinking I wasn't listening. So I avoided it. But my mother didn't. She insisted on keeping Titan close, as if giving him up was the same as accepting that my father was truly gone. Every late afternoon, she would pass by the stable and stand silently for a few minutes looking at the horse. And I pretended not to understand. One of those afternoons, as the sun disappeared behind the mountains and painted the sky a burnt orange, I sat on the wooden fence watching the wind sway the tall grass of the pasture. Titan walked slowly across the field. Free. Strong. Untouchable. My mother appeared behind me holding an old camera in her hands. I found it strange. She almost never filmed anything. "What's that?" I asked. She took a few seconds to answer. "I want to start recording some things on the farm." I frowned. "Why?" She pressed the camera against her chest before looking at me. "Because some memories fade too quickly." At that moment, something in her voice bothered me. It didn't just sound like longing. It sounded like fear. A deep fear. She then discreetly pointed the camera in my direction, and instinctively I turned my face away. "Stop it." "One day you'll understand," she replied calmly. Maybe it was just my imagination. But at that moment I felt she was hiding something from me. And it was there, in that silent late afternoon, watching Titan running through the pasture while my mother held that old camera, that I realized our life on the farm was about to change in a way I would never forget. Because sometimes, silence holds secrets far greater than any shout. At first, I thought it was just a phase my mother was going through. After years of avoiding photographs, videos, and any reminders of the past, seeing her walking around the farm with that old camera hanging around her neck seemed too strange to be normal. She filmed everything. Coffee cooling on the table. The wind passing through the trees. The horses running in the pasture. Even the sound of the rain hitting the roof seemed important to her now. And honestly, it started to bother me. Every time I noticed the lens pointed in my direction, my body automatically froze. "Do you have to record everything like this?" I asked one morning while putting feed out for the animals. She lowered the camera slowly. "I just want to keep some memories. Simple. Direct." But there was something wrong with the way she said it. As if she were trying to sound calm, without really being so. Days passed, and that camera practically became a part of her. My mother even started narrating some recordings alone, as if she were making a documentary of our lives. Sometimes I would hear her voice coming from the living room in the middle of the night. Today the sky dawned heavy, just like the silence of this house. Or, some people learn to hide their pain so well that no one notices they are slowly disappearing. These phrases kept echoing in my head more than they should. One night, I woke up to a noise coming from outside. The whole farm was immersed in that typical bluish darkness of the countryside, too silent. When I looked out the window, I saw a light on near the stable. It was her. My mother was there, filming Titan alone in the middle of the night. It gave me a strange shiver. I put on my jacket and walked to the stable, feeling the cold wind cut my face. As soon as I approached, I heard her voice behind the camera. "Your father loved this time of day. He said animals show their true colors when no one's looking." She hadn't noticed me yet. I stood there for a few seconds, watching. Titan was motionless, staring at my mother as if she understood every word. Then the wooden floor creaked beneath my foot. She turned around quickly. For a moment, she seemed startled. "What are you doing here?" she asked. I could ask the same thing. She turned off the camera too quickly. Quickly, like someone hiding something. I couldn't sleep, that's all. I looked at Titan and then at her. "Mom, why did you suddenly start recording everything?" She looked away. "Because time passes." That doesn't answer my question. The silence between us immediately became heavy. She took a deep breath before running her tired hand through her hair. Some things deserve to be remembered before they disappear. At that moment, I felt a strange tightness in my chest. Because it didn't seem like she was just talking about the farm. It seemed like she was talking about us. In the following days, I began to notice details that had previously gone unnoticed. My mother spent hours organizing old boxes in my father's office. She sorted tapes, photographs, documents. Sometimes she cried in secret, thinking I didn't see. And there was something else. She started filming me more. Much more. While I worked on the fences. While I cleaned the barn. While I watched Titan in the pasture. Always in silence. Always with that distant look that made me uncomfortable. As if she were trying to record something before it was too late. She said she wanted to keep memories, but she seemed to be hiding something. And the more I tried to ignore that feeling, the more it grew inside me. Until, one rainy afternoon, I found an old recording of my father hidden inside her camera. And that changed everything. The rain fell all night. The next morning, the farm looked different. Mud covered the dirt paths, the cold wind swept through the dry trees, and the overcast sky made everything grayer, heavier. I barely slept after finding that hidden recording in my mother's camera. It was an old video of my father. He appeared smiling next to Titan, even younger at that time, while calmly holding the reins. The wind ruffled his hair, and the image trembled as if it had been recorded in a hurry. But what really affected me was his last sentence in the video. "One day he will have to face his fear." I didn't know if my father was talking about the horse, or about life. I spent the rest of the morning trying to forget it. I kept myself busy cleaning tools in the shed, avoiding looking in the direction of the stable. But it was impossible to escape that strange feeling growing inside me. My mother appeared around noon. No camera this time. Her silence alone was enough to make me nervous. "Titan's restless today," she commented while watching the light rain fall outside. I continued cleaning a rusty wrench. "So what?" She crossed her arms. "It's been a long time since anyone rode him." My chest tightened immediately. "Don't start." She ignored my tone. "Your father wouldn't want to see you living like this." That hit me harder than it should have. I looked up immediately. "You don't know what he'd want." The atmosphere instantly became heavy. My mother took a deep breath, trying to stay calm, but I knew that look. She was determined. "You need to go back to the stable." "I don't need to." "Yes, you do." I shook my head and tried to leave, but she grabbed my arm before I could pass. It was rare. My mother almost never showed emotion like that. When I looked into her eyes, I saw fear. Not anger. Fear. "You can't run from this forever," she whispered. That phrase kept echoing in my head. because, deep down, I knew she was right. The problem was that she didn't understand what that place did to me. Every time I entered the stable, my body remembered before my mind. The smell of wet leather. The sound of hooves hitting the ground. The creaking of the old wood. Everything took me back to that night. The night my father rode off during the storm. And never came back. Even so, that afternoon, she took me there. The stable was silent when we entered. Titan looked up immediately when he saw me. His gaze remained the same. Calm. Strong. Almost human at times. But my hands were already trembling. My mother noticed. "He doesn't blame you," she murmured. I frowned. "What are you talking about?" She hesitated for a few seconds. "You blame yourself for your father's accident, don't you?" My heart raced. Because I had never said that out loud. Never. I looked away quickly, feeling my throat tighten. She then placed her hand on my shoulder with a gentleness I hadn't felt in years. "Your father made a choice that night. It wasn't your fault." Her words should have eased my pain. But they did the opposite. Because a part of me still believed that if I had insisted more, if I had asked him to stay, maybe he would still be alive. Titan took a step towards me slowly. And for the first time in years, I didn't back away. The smell of the stable hit me like a forgotten memory. Old wood. Wet earth. Aged leather. It was strange how certain places managed to keep the past intact, even after so many years. Just entering there made me feel like a child again, chasing after my father among the horses while he laughed at my fear. Titan stood before me, breathing calmly. His dark eyes watched me with an almost disconcerting tranquility. My mother slowly released my shoulder. "He missed you," she said softly. I swallowed hard without answering. I wanted to get out of there. I wanted to return to the comfort of the distance I had built over those years. But something held me back at that moment. Maybe guilt. Maybe longing. Or maybe because, for the first time since my father's death, I felt that running away was destroying me more than facing it. My mother picked up the old saddle hanging on the wall. My father's saddle. Just looking at it made my chest tighten. The worn marks on the leather were still there. Small scratches, signs of time. Fragments of a life that seemed so distant now. "Do you remember when he taught you to ride?" she asked. And unfortunately, I did remember. I remembered everything. My father was patient with me. Even when I fell, even when I cried from anger or fear, he never raised his voice. "Horses feel what we feel," he would say. "If you're afraid, they will be too." At the time, I didn't understand. Today, perhaps I understand all too well. While my mother silently prepared Titan, flashes began to appear in my head like old scenes from a forgotten film. My father riding at sunset. The sound of his laughter echoing through the pasture. His strong hands holding the reins as he taught me to keep my balance. For a few seconds, I could almost hear his voice again. And it hurt. In the quietest way possible. My mother finished adjusting the saddle and stepped away. "Just get on him," she said calmly. "You don't need to do anything else." I looked at Titan and felt my hands grow cold. The fear was still there. But along with it, there was something else. Longing. I approached slowly, feeling my heart pounding in my chest. Titan remained still, as if understanding my every hesitation. When I touched the saddle, my memories hit me all at once. The storm that night. My father riding off alone while I watched from the window. I had argued with him just a few hours before. A silly argument. Teenage. I said horrible things. Things I never had a chance to fix. And then he rode off into the rain. It was the last time I saw him alive. I closed my eyes immediately, trying to push those images away. But they were still there. They always had been. My mother noticed my failing breath. "Hey, look at me." I slowly looked up. For the first time in years, she seemed as broken as I was. "You think you were the last person who hurt your father, but you weren't," she said, her voice trembling. "He loved you more than anything in this world." I felt my throat tighten. Because part of me had spent years believing that accident had started with me. With that argument. With my words. Titan moved his head gently and rested his muzzle on my shoulder. And it was in that instant that something inside me gave way. I took a deep breath, and finally climbed onto him. At first, my whole body trembled. But then Titan began to walk slowly around the stable. One step at a time. And with each movement, it was as if my father came back for a few seconds. Each step of that horse brought my father back for a few seconds. The wind blew through the cracks in the wood as I gripped the reins tightly, trying to hold back the tears that could no longer be hidden. Because sometimes the pain doesn't disappear. It just waits for the right moment to be truly felt. After that day in the stable, something changed between me and my mother. It wasn't a big change. There was no emotional hug or long conversation like in the movies. But the silence between us seemed different now. Less cold. Less distant. Even so, the camera continued. It still filmed everything. The horses running early in the morning. The coffee boiling on the old stove. The wind swept across the dry fields of the farm. Sometimes even I, distracted, working near the fences or carrying hay to the barn. And the more she recorded, the more I felt there was something she wasn't telling me. That week, I started noticing strange little details. Bills scattered across the kitchen table. Phone calls interrupted when I entered the room. My mother's tired gaze growing heavier each day. Until one afternoon I found her crying alone in my father's office. The door was ajar. She held a stack of documents while the camera remained on the table, silently recording. It was the first time I saw my mother truly break down. She didn't seem like the strong woman who tried to control everything all the time. She just seemed too tired to carry so much alone. I pushed the door open slowly. She quickly wiped her face. Sorry. I didn't mean to intrude. She took a deep breath before turning off the camera. But this time, she didn't try to hide it. I looked at the papers scattered across the table. Contracts. Debts. Bank notices. My stomach churned. What's this? She took a few seconds to answer. Seconds that were too long. The farm is almost bankrupt. Her words pierced the room like a dry blow. What? She lowered her eyes. After your father died, things got difficult. Much more than I let you realize. I felt the ground disappear for a moment. The farm always seemed eternal to me. As if that place would remain there forever, regardless of time or pain. But looking around that empty office, I realized how much was crumbling without me noticing. My mother ran a tired hand across her face. I tried to save everything on my own. Her voice faltered. But I don't think I'll be able to. I looked at the camera on the table. Then I finally understood. Is that why you're recording everything? She nodded slowly. Her eyes were red. I just didn't want our story to disappear along with this farm. My chest tightened in a way I hadn't expected. Because for weeks I thought those recordings hid some dark secret. But the truth was much sadder. She was trying to save memories. To save pieces of our family before it all ended. Your father loved this place, she said softly. And I was afraid that one day you would forget who we were here. I looked out the office window. Titan walked slowly through the pasture as the wind rustled the tall grass around him. The sunset covered the entire farm with that melancholic golden light of late afternoon. Everything seemed beautiful. And fragile. For the first time, I realized that she was broken inside too. My mother was never cold because she stopped feeling. She became cold because feeling too much was slowly destroying her. And maybe I had been selfish for not realizing that sooner. She picked up the camera again, but this time her hands trembled. When all this is over, I just wanted to have something to prove that we were happy one day. I couldn't answer. Because at that moment, I was also trying not to fall apart. The storm began shortly after midnight. The wind was beating so hard against the windows that it seemed to want to tear the whole house from the ground. Lightning illuminated the dark sky for fractions of a second, revealing the empty fields of the farm before everything returned to darkness again. I was awake. After the conversation in the office, my head couldn't rest. The debts. The possibility of losing the farm. The hidden weight my mother had carried alone for years. All of that swirled inside me like the storm itself outside. Then I heard the noise. A dry thud coming from outside. My mother appeared in the hallway at that same instant, startled. "Did you hear that?" Before I could even answer, another sound echoed in the middle of the rain. Titan's neighing. My heart raced. We ran to the porch, and the icy wind hit our faces violently. The side door of the stable was open, swinging wildly in the force of the storm. "No," my mother whispered. Titan had run away. Without thinking, I grabbed the lantern hanging near the door while my mother hurriedly put on her raincoat. "He must have been scared by the thunder," I said. But she seemed too nervous for that to be all. "If he runs towards the road," she didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. We set off together in the rain. The mud made every step difficult. The wind almost snatched the breath from our lungs, and the darkness made everything worse. The lantern's light flickered in my hands as we walked through the pasture calling his name. "Titan. Titan." Nothing. Only the sound of the storm swallowing our voices. My mother stumbled near the old fence, and I caught her arm before she fell. For a second, we just stared at each other in silence under the heavy rain. She looked tired. Older. As if the last few years were finally really showing that night. The rain was falling heavily, but what hurt most was the silence between us. We continued walking to the most secluded part of the farm, near the forest where my father used to ride. And it was there that things began to change. Because in the middle of that storm, no longer able to pretend that everything was all right, my mother finally began to speak. "After your father died, I became angry with you." The words hit me like a punch. I stopped immediately. She stopped too. The rain streamed down her face mixed with the tears she could no longer hide. "Every time I looked at you, I remembered him." My chest tightened. "So that's why you distanced yourself?" She closed her eyes for a moment. I thought that if I allowed myself to feel that pain, I wouldn't survive. I never imagined hearing that from her. I spent years believing that my mother had simply stopped loving me the same way after my father's death. But now, looking at her crumbling in front of me, I realized that she was just lost too. Maybe we both were. A lightning bolt illuminated the field in the distance. And then we saw Titan. He was near the old tree on the hilltop, motionless in the rain, as if he were waiting for us. My mother began to cry for real at that moment. We ran to him. As I approached, Titan rested his head against my chest calmly, breathing heavily. I stroked his wet mane, trying to catch my breath. My mother stopped beside me in silence. And for the first time in years, neither of us tried to hide our pain from each other. She held my hand tightly. A simple thing, but enough to break something inside me. Because at that moment I understood a truth that had taken me years to see. Grief had separated our family, but it was also the only thing capable of bringing us together again. While the storm continued to rage around the farm, we returned home together. And, for the first time since my father's death, it didn't feel like I was returning alone. The storm had passed, but the house still seemed to carry its weight. The silence after the rain was different. It wasn't peace. It was exhaustion. It was as if the whole farm had cried along with us, and now only exhaustion remained. Titan was back in the stable. Safe. Calm. But inside me, nothing was calm. My mother entered the kitchen without saying anything. Soaked, tired, with a lost look as if she were still on that hill in the rain. I was too. But for the first time in a long time, I couldn't pretend everything was all right. I sat at the table. She stood still for a moment, waiting. Perhaps waiting for the usual silence. But it didn't come from me. "I need to talk," I finally said. My voice came out lower than I expected. She looked at me, surprised. I inhaled slowly, as if each word was too heavy to exist. I never really talked about that night. The atmosphere seemed to grow even quieter. My mother sat slowly in the chair opposite me. I didn't know where to begin. Perhaps because I had spent years avoiding beginning. "I remember everything," I continued. "The rain. The sound of the door. Him leaving. I swallowed hard. My throat burned. And I remember what I said to him before. My mother looked away. But she didn't interrupt. That's what gave me courage. I said horrible things. Things I should never have said to him. My hand trembled on the table. And then he left. I took a deep breath, feeling it all come rushing back. And I spent years thinking that had caused everything. Silence. Just silence. Until I finally said what had been trapped inside me since that night. I wasn't just angry with her. I was angry with the whole world. My voice faltered at the end. And for the first time, I didn't hold back. I was angry with him for leaving. With you for changing. With the farm for continuing to exist as if nothing had happened. The words came out as if someone had opened a door I had kept locked for years. I couldn't stop anymore. And I was angry with myself for not stopping him. My mother took a deep breath, and when she spoke, her voice came out broken. You were just a boy. I shook my head. But I didn't feel like one. I felt my chest tighten. I felt responsible for everything. I looked up at her. For the first time, defenseless. Without a mask. Just me. And that destroyed me inside. My mother was silent for a few long seconds. Then she reached across the table. Slowly. Unhurriedly. And touched mine. A simple gesture. But heavy with meaning. I blamed myself too, she said softly. Every day. My breath caught in my throat. Because I had never heard that from her. Never. She squeezed my hand tighter. We were broken. But never realized we were broken together. I felt something inside me give way. Not all at once. But slowly. Like a pain that finally finds space to escape. And there, in that silent kitchen, after years of carrying everything alone, I finally understood that talking didn't change the past. But it could begin to change what remained of it. That night seemed calmer than all the others. After everything that was said in the kitchen, the house had changed. Not because the problems had disappeared, but because for the first time they had been put on the table. My mother was in the living room when I entered. The camera was on the sofa. But this time, it was off. She motioned for me to sit down. And I sat. The silence between us was no longer as heavy as before. It was different. As if there was now space to breathe. She took a deep breath before speaking. I need to show you something. She picked up the camera carefully, as if it were more fragile than it seemed. She turned it on. The screen flickered and a video began. It was me. Younger. Maybe 13 years old. I was sitting on the porch of the farm, laughing while my father adjusted the saddle on Titan. The image was simple, nothing special. But there was something about it that struck me immediately. A version of myself that I almost didn't remember anymore. Happy. Light. Without the weight I had carried for years. I paused, holding my breath. My mother stood beside me in silence while the video continued. In the background, her voice emerged in the recording. He was different before everything happened. I swallowed hard. The video cut to another scene. After the accident. Me standing in the same place, but completely different. Tense shoulders. Empty gaze. Avoiding looking at the stable in the background. The difference was brutal. I closed my eyes for a second. My mother turned off the camera. And for the first time, she didn't try to explain anything immediately. She just looked at me. With a sad calm. That's why I started recording, she finally said. My brow furrowed. What do you mean? She took a deep breath. I realized you were slowly disappearing after your father's death. My chest tightened. You didn't smile like you used to. You didn't talk about the same things. You didn't look at anything like you used to. She gripped the camera tightly. And I was afraid of losing you too. Silence. She continued. So I started filming everything. Not to watch over you, but to remind you of who you were before the pain changed you. I felt my throat close up. Because that wasn't control. It was fear. It was love in a twisted, silent, desperate way. I didn't want you to forget yourself. she said softly. Even if I couldn't reach you any other way. My breathing became unsteady. For years I interpreted that as pressure, as invasion, as emotional distance. But now, everything seemed different. More human. More broken. I looked up at her. So you never tried to control me? She shook her head slowly. I just tried to keep you here. Here. With her. With life. With myself. I felt something strange growing in my chest. Not pain this time. Something lighter. Almost dangerously light. My mother put the camera back on the table. I made many mistakes, she said. But it was never to hurt you. We were silent. But it was no longer an empty silence. It was a silence that finally understood everything that hadn't been said for years. I looked at the cameras off-screen. And for the first time, I fully understood the phrase that had haunted me from the beginning. She wasn't trying to control me. She was trying to save me. Not from the world, but from myself, when I had already begun to lose myself within my own pain. The farm fell silent after that last recording. Not an empty silence, but a different kind of silence. As if, for the first time in a long time, nothing there needed to be hidden. Titan was in the stable, breathing calmly. My mother was on the porch, gazing at the horizon without the camera for the first time in weeks. And me. I was sitting in the same place as always, but feeling as if something inside me had shifted. Not disappeared. Just rearranged. I spent years believing I knew exactly where the pain resided within me. I thought it had a name, an origin, a defined blame. But the truth is, pain was never that simple. It hid in places we don't want to look. In silences that were too long. In gestures we don't understand at the time. In people who love. In the way they can. Sometimes the people who hurt us the most are also the ones who try hardest to protect us. Today I understand this in a way I didn't before. My mother wasn't perfect. Neither was I. And my father. He wasn't just a distant memory idealized by longing. He was human. Like us. With choices, mistakes, and moments that no one can undo. We grow up thinking that love should always be light. But sometimes, it comes heavy. It comes confused. It comes tinged with fear, loss, and attempts at emotional survival. And we don't recognize that at the time. Only later. I looked at the farm around me. Everything was still there. The fields, the animals, the golden dust of the late afternoon. Nothing had changed on the outside. But inside, everything had changed. I understood that there isn't just one way to deal with what hurts. Some scream. Some distance themselves. Some try to record everything, afraid of forgetting what still matters. I closed my eyes for a moment. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like running away from the past. Just accepting that it's part of me. My mother called my name from the porch. I looked at her. And she didn't say anything important. She just looked back at me. Like someone who finally doesn't need to explain themselves all the time anymore. Perhaps this is healing. Not forgetting. Not erasing. But learning to look at everything that happened, without getting lost in it. And as the sun set behind the mountains, I understood something simple. We don't go back to being who we were before the pain. But we can learn to move on. Despite it.